what's going on, everybody? RogersBase here, and as many of you guys know, One Piece manga chapter 894 has been officially released in Weekly Shonen Jump this morning, and because of that, I really wanted to sit down and share my thoughts in a One Piece theory discussion for you guys, detailing the possible powers, abilities, and appearance of the newest Gear 4 form that was revealed at the end of chapter 894, Gear 4 Snakeman. Hence why I'm sitting with a little snake plushie on my shoulder right now. Now, a couple things before we really dive deep into this discussion. First off, this theory video is probably going to have the shortest shelf life of any theory video that I've ever recorded, because we may find out all the specifics regarding Gear 4 Snakeman as soon as the very next chapter of One Piece. And two, I know a ton of other YouTubers have already done videos sharing their thoughts on what Gear 4 Snakeman could be, and so I may be stepping on some toes with some of these theories, and there might be a lot of similarities between things that I'm saying and things that other people have been saying, but keep in mind, I'm not trying to steal anybody's theories. I'm literally just sharing my thoughts, and if those happen to overlap with other people that made videos, great, but I'm not trying to steal any theories here. I know people are really sensitive about that nowadays, and so just keep in mind, these are my thoughts, and if other people have similar thoughts, that's really cool. With that being said, the prevailing theory in the community right now is that Gear 4 Snakeman is going to be a more compact, a sleeker, and most importantly, a much speedier version of Gear 4. And I 100% agree with this. In fact, I've been talking up a Gear 4 Speedman form since the introduction of Katakuri, because when we found out that Katakuri could actually see into the future, we knew that the thing that Luffy needed to boost more than anything else to be able to take this guy on is his speed. And in every fight so far that has introduced a new Gear 4 form, we have seen Luffy change up his tactics and put an emphasis on a different one of his techniques. If you look at the Luffy versus Doflamingo fight back in Dressrosa, Doflamingo acknowledged Luffy's speed. He said he was fast enough to keep up with him, but that his punches really lacked power. So what did Luffy do? He created Gear 4 Bounce Man, pulled back his punches, and had these incredibly powerful Kong gun attacks that finally took out Doflamingo. Look at the fight with Cracker. He needed to sort of wear down Cracker's stamina, so he created Gear 4 Tank Man, which put an emphasis on his armament hockey, really built up his strength, and he was able to power through like a wrecking ball and take on Cracker. And now, he's taking on Katakuri, a guy who could see into the future, and he needs to sort of work his way out of that situation. And in fact, this was specifically foreshadowed at the very beginning of 894. So in that conversation with Luffy, Rayleigh mentions a few very important details. First off, he reveals that people like Katakuri exist. People who have honed their observation hockey so much that they're actually able to see a small glimpse into the future. But Rayleigh also mentions in the same conversation that it's going to be near impossible for Luffy to get to that level in just a matter of 2 years, and he's going to need to find a way to work his way out of that situation. And Rayleigh kind of gives him a hint of this earlier in the conversation, where he mentions that Luffy is much more proficient in sensing the feelings of others. And this is once again clarified later on in the conversation when Luffy says, well, yeah, I take someone's personality into account when I fight them. And I think this is crucial to understanding Snakeman, because snakes can sense fear in real life, and they do it through a couple very specific techniques. First off, snakes have a heightened sense of touch. That is one way that they're actually able to predict their opponent's movements. Is what they're able to do is, because they're close to the ground, snakes can feel the vibrations of either their prey or their predators and use that to either get out of the situation if it's something that's going to eat them, or if they feel a little mouse is running on a branch and they want to go snatch it up, they can feel through the vibrations of the ground where the mouse is going to go, predict it, and then boop, snatch up the mouse and take down their prey. Secondly, many snakes have infrared detection. This is something that I saw brought up in a couple other videos, but I wanted to bring it up here because I think it is crucially important when trying to predict what abilities Snakeman might have. Now, let me actually read you guys this quote from Nature.com explaining the infrared detection in snakes. It says here, snakes can see in the dark thanks to protein channels that are activated by heat from the bodies of their prey. Vipers, pythons, and boas have holes on their faces called pit organs, which contain a membrane that can detect infrared radiation from warm bodies up to 1 meter away. Now, if you remember in 894, Luffy's closing his eyes, and we believe that he was using his observation hockey to try to predict Katakuri's movements. We see a grayed outline of Katakuri, and then we see Katakuri use a grilled mochi attack. Not just any attack, but an attack that clearly brings up his body heat. He is using grilled mochi, and Luffy, having his eyes closed, is sort of seeing where Katakuri is going. I think that was meant to be a foreshadowing of potential abilities that Luffy is going to be able to unlock using this new Gear 4 Snakeman form. And since we already know that Luffy is proficient in sensing the feelings of his opponents, I think that maybe Snakeman is going to be a semi-explanation of how he's going to be able to predict Katakuri's movements despite not having mastered observation haki. That he'll either be able to feel the vibrations in the ground from Katakuri's movements to be able to predict where he's going to go, to maybe sense the body heat coming off of Katakuri when he closes his eyes. But there's one other really important way that snakes can sense the feelings of their opponents, and that is through a heightened sense of smell. But here's the thing, snakes actually don't smell through their nostrils, snakes smell through their tongue. And I think this might give us a sort of hint as to what Luffy might look like in his Snakeman form. Now I think everyone unanimously agrees that Snakeman will probably be a much slimmer form of Gear 4 than something like Tankman or Bounceman, because it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for Luffy in his speediest form to be the size of like this giant wrecking ball or muscly dude that's bouncing all over the place. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I could see Snakeman being a lot taller than his normal forms, because when you stretch out a snake, you know, if he's going to stretch out his body to be super, super slim and sort of weave his way through other situations, I do think that maybe Snakeman might be a really, really tall form, or maybe he'll be as tall as Katakuri, but much slimmer and much lankier. But I think the real design aspect of Snakeman that's going to stand out is I think that Luffy is going to have an elongated tongue. And since snakes in real life can sense the danger in certain situations using their heightened sense of smell via their tongue, I do think that the tongue will also have an important role to play in Luffy's Snakeman powers. And it actually makes a lot of sense that at some point Luffy would have some type of form that would stretch out his tongue. We haven't really seen that, but he's made of rubber. Of course, if he could stretch out one part of his body and other parts of his body that I'm sure Oda would like to talk about in SBSs, I do think it's possible for Luffy to just stretch out his tongue and to use that stretched out tongue to really sense the danger in a situation and try to predict his opponent's movements using all the things we already talked about in this video. And I think it would really make Snakeman look pretty iconic. And it makes a lot of sense that Luffy would have a Gear 4 form with an elongated tongue during a story arc where he is surrounded by sweets and food. Heck, his opponent even has a food-based ability. It just makes sense! So to sum up everything that I was talking about in terms of these potential powers for Snakeman, I do ultimately think that Luffy is going to use Gear 4 Snakeman to compensate for his lack of mastery of observation haki, and that he's going to utilize his proficiency in sensing his opponent's feelings through all of the new abilities that he's going to grant through Snakeman. One, sensing body heat, which was already foreshadowed with that grilled mochi attack from Katakuri, where he was closing his eyes and he saw that grayed out version of Katakuri about to attack. Two, through feeling the vibrations in the ground, much like a real snake would, only difference is that Luffy actually has the luxury of having feet, so he doesn't need to have his belly down to the ground. And three, utilizing a heightened sense of smell through an elongated tongue, which I think will be the most iconic part of this Snakeman design. He might be taller, he might be lankier, but ultimately, those are the things that I think we will see in his Snakeman form. And additionally, I think he will still be able to utilize observation haki, Armament haki, and Conqueror's haki, obviously, even though he hasn't completely mastered all three forms yet. And when Luffy eventually does master all three forms by the end of the series, we are going to be looking at a serious threat if he combines those powers with that of Snakeman's. With all that being said, there is still one potential offensive power that I'm thinking of that Luffy could potentially develop in his Gear 4 Snakeman form. It's actually a very obvious power I'm surprised not a lot of people are talking about, despite how integral this is to both real-life snakes and also the story that has been set up in One Piece thus far. And that is the potential for Luffy to grow venomous fangs in his Gear 4 Snakeman form. Now, hear me out. One, Luffy can stretch multiple parts of his body. Maybe Luffy has learned how to stretch out his teeth. And how cool would it be, considering we've already seen this fight between Luffy and Katakuri, where everything you can do, I can do better? What if Luffy grew fangs similar to that of Katakuri and actually attacked him using these fangs, and that these fangs are venomous due to all the toxins that have been built up in Luffy's system over the years? You gotta remember, he was poisoned by Magellan. He was poisoned by the fish. He's developed immunity to a lot of different poisons, different type of poison gas. And while natural poison isn't something he's developed an immunity to yet, he was poisoned by a poisonous fish at the very beginning of this arc. And that would be a really cool way to sort of bring this all back around, is that maybe by stretching out his fangs or maybe stretching out glands in his mouth, he's able to have venomous fangs that could then take on Katakuri. Again, I don't think Luffy's going to be over here spraying venom out at his opponents, but I do think it would be really cool if maybe that poison aspect of his personality and his history is brought up during his fight with Katakuri, especially if he looks similar to Katakuri with these crazy fangs that he could potentially develop in Snakeman form. So with all that being said, I feel like I've exhausted talking about his potential powers, abilities, and appearance in this new Gear 4 form, but the last thing I want to talk about is where Luffy may have drawn inspiration from to develop Gear 4 Snakeman. Now, I've seen a lot of other YouTubers mention that potentially he developed this technique as a thank you to Boa Hancock for helping him during those 2 years of training. It makes a lot of sense to me. I like that. I ship Luffy and Boa. I like those two together. But I also think that the Boa Hancock and the Sandersonia sisters have a ton of connections with snakes. I mean, they're the Kuja pirates after all. I do think it would be really cool if this was developed as a thank you to Boa. I've seen some people saying that he developed this just by fighting giant snakes on Ruskaina, which I don't think is the case because we haven't seen giant snakes there. We've seen other animals, but not giant snakes. But the one place we have seen a giant snake, and I think maybe this is where Luffy got some inspiration for this new form, is Nola in Skypiea. And Skypiea is where we were first introduced to observation hockey in the first place. Nola obviously played a really crucial role in that story arc. He had these giant venomous fangs. His scales were harder than steel. I think it would be really cool if maybe Luffy drew some inspiration from his time with Nola during the Skypiea arc for this new Snakeman form. It could be a mix of his time with Nola, and again, a thank you developed for Boa Hancock, but we're just going to have to wait and see on that. And that about wraps up my theories on Gear 4 Snakeman. If you liked anything that I had to say, please make sure to like this video and share this video. This video has a very short shelf life. I don't get views in the first couple days. This video is never going to get views because everybody's going to know what Snakeman is. So if you liked it and you enjoyed me putting together this theory video for you guys, please make sure to like it and share it. And of course, leave a comment down in the description below letting me know your thoughts on Gear 4 Snakeman as well. And of course, please be sure to subscribe because I bring you guys reviews about the anime and the manga every single week. I cannot wait for One Piece 825. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!